Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, once again. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of India Habitat Center and Mr. Benoy K Behl. Today's talk and screening is the seventh in the monthly series, Glimpses of Culture. The subject today is Ladakh and Spiti, Sanctuary of Buddhism. Mr. Behl has spent much time over 3 decades traveling across the barren, high-altitude, cold desert of the trans-Himalayas. He is the person who is known to have documented the early monasteries of Ladakh, Lahaul Spiti, Kinnaur, Western and Central Tibet, Bhutan, Sikkim, and Arunachal Pradesh. He has done extensive photography in monasteries, even above 14,000 feet altitude. Where there were no motorable roads, he has traveled even 2 days on horseback to reach remote monasteries. The result of his painstaking efforts is that there is a treasure of art and culture which has been visually archived. For those of you who were not with us for previous talks, I will give a brief introduction to the work of Mr. Behl. Benoy K Behl is an art historian, filmmaker, and photographer who is known for his tireless and prolific output of work over the past 46 years. He has taken over 53,000 photographs of Asian monuments and art heritage and made 145 documentaries, which are regularly screened at major cultural institutions worldwide. His photographic exhibitions have been warmly received in 74 countries. They have been inaugurated by ministers of the governments of various countries, ambassadors, archbishops, and other dignitaries. He is the person who, for the first time, photographed the 5th century Buddhist paintings of Ajanta in their true colors and details. His book, The Ajanta Caves, is one of the most widely read books on Indian art history in the world. His publisher, Thames and Hudson London, will be bringing out yet another edition of this book in the spring of 2023. This will include some images of Ajanta paintings which have been carefully digitally restored by Mr. Behl. His recent books include The Art of India in 2 beautiful volumes, Buddhism, the Path of Compassion, the Buddhist Heritage of Sri Lanka, and Hindu deities worshipped in Japan. Mr. Behl is also known for having photographed the Buddhist heritage of the world across 20 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Benoy K Behl speaks to us today on his much beloved lands of Ladakh and Spiti. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sujata. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. It gives me great pleasure to be here with all of you to share some aspects of the beautiful lands of the trans-Himalayas. My many thanks to India Habitat Center for this yet one more opportunity to share these aspects of culture with all of you. It's really been marvelous of India Habitat Center, and I'm grateful to Mr. Suneet Tandon, the director, for the warm interest that he has shown. I'm also very grateful to Ms. Renu Oberoi, who has so wonderfully organized all these screenings. My thanks are also due to Doordarshan. It is quite remarkable that a television network, and this is truly the work of a fine public service broadcaster, that a television network should sponsor the making of so many films about paintings, about sculpture, about stupas and temples, all deeply researched work and all serious work in this time when I believe it is TRPs and very commercial interests that television networks normally have. It is wonderful of Doordarshan to have sponsored so many of these films, including the one which you are going to see today. Ladies and gentlemen, the what I have spent a great deal of time touring the lands of Ladakh and Spiti. In fact, Ladakh for a long time was like a second home to me. I've made about 25 trips to Ladakh and spent many weeks on most of these occasions, traveling to remote places. Sujata mentioned the 2 days I spent on horseback, that was in Zanskar, to travel to a monastery where there was no motorable road. What she did not mention was that that was the first time I ever sat on a horse. I do not know how to ride a horse. And here we were. It was steep mountainsides, going down steeply, going up steeply. And most of all, I was really scared when we were going down. When you're going down steeply, you get the feeling that you are just going to fall over the head of the horse and onto the ground in front. But the wonderful thing was that the kindly horse seemed to understand everything. He seemed to understand how I felt. And I would say that the horse was like a bodhisattva. He very gently, very carefully took me on that journey. It was wonderful to be with that lovely white horse. In fact, the most surprising thing is that by the end of the journey, when we were returning and we came back to across a flat piece of land, the horse seemed to understand my desires and even ran. And it felt so wonderful. Just imagine a person who has never sat on a horse before. And this is something which is entirely the doing of that wonderful Zanskari horse. It is such people, if I may be allowed to use the word people for including a horse, because in the Indian vision, the word animal seems out of context. The horse and all other living beings are all beings, jiva. And we are all the same. We are all intrinsically connected. We are all the same. And that is why the stories of the Buddha and his previous births include stories of him born as different animals, as a monkey, as an elephant, as all kinds of animals. Helps us to understand that we are all the same. And as I was saying, it was not only the horse, but the people of Ladakh, all the people who left a deep impression upon me in those years that I traveled in that high altitude desert. The people were dignified. They were simple people, they had very simple lifestyles, but they had a dignity which was far beyond that of the people of our great cities and urban landscapes. And I remember when I was repairing a 11th century monastery in a very remote village in Ladakh. And I lived in that village for many weeks, carrying out the repair work of these crumbling walls and roofs. In fact, there was a wedding in the village during that time, and I was so much a part of the village that there was a seat which was my seat in that wedding feast, and really it was great to be with those people. Now, what I had already seen, and I saw even more while living with the villagers, was that the people of Ladakh at that time were so peaceful. They never even argued with each other. If two people happened to disagree with each other, they would just get up and go away. But there was no fighting. So much good sense, so much peace, and such a depth of dignity and understanding. And all this was so well maintained by the culture of the Buddhist faith. We must always remember that the Buddhist faith is a science of the mind. In the Indian philosophic traditions, there are no gods. There are deities. Deities who are the personifications of qualities within us. We look upon the deities, we meditate upon the deities in order to awaken those wonderful qualities of wisdom, of compassion, of energy, to fight the demons of our ignorance, to awaken all these within us. We hope to awaken them, and we hope that they will grow and fill us completely, and at that point we would have become the deity. So it is all a very well thought out process of understanding ourselves and how to bring out the best that is within us. And this marvelous culture has survived so well in the harsh lands of the trans-Himalayan region. So today it gives me great pleasure to share with you a journey through this sanctuary of Buddhism, Ladakh and Spiti. And now I will request Sushant, who has been doing these screenings so wonderfully, looking after the technical aspects. Please run the film, Sushant. Thank you so much.
Over the past 31 years, I've had the joy of traveling repeatedly to many corners of this vast subcontinent that is India. It is amazing to see how landscapes, culture, food, music, dances, and even languages change every few hundred kilometers that you drive. You see the highest mountains of the world, great seas, bountiful rivers, and best of all, a people whose thoughts and heritage go back a few thousand years. Join us on an enthralling journey. I am traveling again across the whole of India to bring you spectacular India. It is a spectacle of nature at its grandest that we see here. The rugged mountains reach for the skies. This high-altitude cold desert has a startling variety of landscapes which vary in altitude from 10,000 feet to over 20,000 feet. Life is difficult in this harsh and inhospitable land. There are parts of Ladakh and Spiti which are very isolated even today. For more than 6 months of the year, the high mountain passes are snow-bound and the remote valley of Zanskar is cut off from the rest of the world. During that time, it is only along the frozen Zanskar river that the people are able to walk and come to the Leh district to be in touch with the world.
The high mountain passes which connect the valley of Spitty to the rest of the world remain snowbound for half the year. This makes Spitty one of the most isolated regions of the trans-Himalayas. The culture of this region is steeped in the compassion of the Buddhist faith. There are high-altitude pastures which have offered a home to nomadic settlers over the centuries. The Brukpas, for instance, are Aryan tribes who made Ladakh their home many centuries ago. They continue their ancient customs and traditions nurtured in the seclusion of the high mountains. The trans-Himalayas have been a crucible of cultures since times immemorial. Caravans passed through Ladakh on the trade routes in ancient times. Leh was on an artery of the routes which connected China to the lands of the Mediterranean. Along with commerce, there was the constant flow of cultural and artistic influences which travelled to Ladakh in times gone by. Over the centuries, philosophic ideas came here again and again from the eastern plains of India and from Kashmir.
We are at Mulbek, 35 kilometers southeast of Kargil. This is on the ancient trade route which connected Kashmir to Leh in Ladakh. In the 8th and 9th centuries, 3 such colossal Maitreya Buddha statues, each more than 20 feet tall, were made on this trade route, marking the movement of Buddhist culture and Kashmiri art to Ladakh. These Maitreya figures also continue the tradition of colossal Buddhas, which was first seen in the mid-5th century in the Kanheri caves of Western India. It was seen a little later in the Buddhist caves of Ajanta and in the Hindu caves at Elephanta. The tradition was later carried forward here in Ladakh, in Bamiyan in Afghanistan, in China and in Japan. We see here the artistic style of Kashmir in the 8th and 9th centuries.
In the early time, it is said that some 51 or 53 great Indian scholars and Pandits have been invited into Tibet. Their purpose was translation, preaching Buddhism, teaching the Tibetans. In the second phase of development of Buddhism, when it took place after 9th century, till it is of the something like 13th, 14th century, he says that something like 120 Indian scholars were invited to Tibet.
Buddhism arrived in Ladakh very early. The Sani stupa in Zanskar is believed to have been made by the Emperor Kanishka in the 1st century AD. The first great diffusion of Buddhism here was when Guru Padmasambhava swept across the trans-Himalayas, establishing Buddhism in the 8th century. the great Guru cleansed the land of evil spirits with his Cham, or masked ritual dance. This sacred dance is performed even today to keep the land pure for the faith to prosper. Here, in the Cham at the Hemis Monastery, the monks are transformed into benign and wrathful deities.
Just a little southeast of Leh, next to the Sheh Palace, are these incised rock carvings of 5 Dhyani Buddhas. With their typical crowns and the lines made below them, these are typical of the art of Kashmir of around the time of Guru Padmasambhava in the 8th century.
At the end of the 10th century, a great revival of Buddhism occurred. This is known as the second great diffusion of Buddhism in the trans-Himalayas. In this period, 108 monasteries are believed to have been constructed by King Yeshe O. This grand project was supervised by Rinchen Zangpo, who is also known as Lhotsava, or the Great Translator. This chain of monastic temples was built right across Ladakh, Lahore Spiti, Kinnaur and Western Tibet. The period of the making of the monasteries of Rinchen Zangpo is enshrined in the memory of the people as a magical time. They believe that the Great Translator created each of the beautiful temples in the space of only one night. The villagers awoke in the morning to see a new temple. The temples of Alchi, Mangyu and Sumda are believed to have been made in the time of Rinchen Zangpo. They are made in fertile pockets and river valleys of the Leh district and have close similarities to each other. It was believed that a pilgrimage to all three in a single day would lead to instant salvation. The paintings on the walls of Alchi belong to the period of the second great diffusion of Buddhism. These are recognized to be among the finest paintings of the art of the world. In the vast and bleak desert lands of the trans-Himalayas, these temples are like an oasis of color. One enters a world of graceful forms and joyous expression. The worshipper is transported through the lilting grace of these paintings to a realm far away from the cares and confusion of the material world. In the rugged landscape of Ladakh, the people live in deep harmony with nature. Their monasteries or gompas symbolize their religious view of life.
We are here at the Fyan Monastery, west of Leh, about 22 kilometers. We are with Namgyal Ji, the head of the Fyan Monastery, who is telling us about so many things to do with Buddhism. नामग्याल जी, आप कितने सालों से यहाँ हैं?
ऐसे तो मैं बचपन से जब छोटा लामा बनता है तो इसी गुम्पा में बनाया है। तो इसकी यहाँ हम 15 साल के आयु तक हम यहाँ छोटा लामा बना के यहाँ किसी गुरु के पास बैठे हैं।
They are here at a very young age to learn a different sort of knowledge. This is not knowledge which can be gained from books. This is deep knowledge about life, what really matters in life. Here in the monastery, they will learn from their gurus. In the Indian tradition, it is the guru who is most important. It is he who will show the path towards leading life in the right way.
ये हमारा छोटा यंग लामा है जिसको हम चुंजुंग कहते हैं। ये हर एक गांव से आया है। कुछ लोग लेह से है, कुछ लोग शुशोत से है, कुछ लोग उधर नुब्राविली दिगर से है, और ये सामने कुछ लोग है ये दर्शिक गरकोन ये डोपा एरिया से है जो पुराने आर्य नस्ल का है।
Buddhism is actually for the inner discipline. It is not the worldly gains, because the outside world or sansara, which is called, it is somewhere it will trap you into their web. When we get into their web, then the life circle keeps on going, birth and death keeps on going. Buddhism stress over how to get out of that. So getting out of that, it is called the liberation. The deities are the innermost spiritual aspect or experience or subtle mind of the individual being. So it is how to cultivate that and how to identify and become one with that. Normally we misunderstand the term as a God. Sometimes we try to make it the God. When you call it the God, means that the creator who creates. So therefore in Buddhist perspective, that is absolutely invalid. So therefore we are using it small g as a God or the deity.
Actually all the deities you find in Tantrayana, in Tibetan Buddhism, they are as you said, they are form of different wisdoms, like compassion and wisdom and the power. So all these qualities with the qualities of Buddhas appeared in different forms, and then that is easier for practitioners to visualize.
We are in the Gongkhang, or the prayer room of the protective deities of Lama Yuru Monastery. And these are the wrathful protective deities. In Buddhism, this wrath is a wrath of compassion. It is the wrath with which we drive away the evil spirits of our ignorance. For ignorance is the only evil in Buddhism.
Mantras and blessings are written upon flags. These are placed on the roofs of houses and mountaintops, where the winds can take the blessings and carry them everywhere. It is thoughts of the divine which permeate every aspect and every action in the lives of the devout. All deeds are meant as offerings to the divine.
The people have put these khataks as a mark of honor and respect on the Sia bush. Sia means rose. This is the wild rose of Ladakh and of the entire trans-Himalayan region. In the middle of the arid desert, this rose gives forth its abundant fragrance to the whole world. There is much to be learnt in the mountains. Perhaps this is one of the lessons we must learn of generosity. तो अंदर की पेंटिंग्स तो सब ठीक ठाक है ना? There are numerous temples, big and small, all over Ladakh. In 1997, when I came across this, Guru Lakhang, in old Fyan village very close to Leh city, its walls were crumbling and the paintings inside were getting lost. Then, with the permission of Mr. Shering Narbu, the owner, I repaired this monastery structurally and saved it in 1998. The paintings inside of many deities are of about the 13th century. Such temples are part of the living cultural heritage of Ladakh. Murup Namgyal is the most popular traditional singer of Ladakh. More than that, he is a living treasure. He is a repository of the cultural traditions of Ladakh. Murup is going to tell us about the prayers which are taking place in his house just now.
ये जो मेरे घर में अभी पूजा चल रहा है, इसे हम सांस कहते हैं. सांस मीन प्यूरिफाई. तो ये पूजा हमारे लद्दाख के हर घर में 1 महीने में एक बार ज़रूर करते हैं। ये इसलिए करते हैं कि हमसे गलती आगे पीछे कुछ ना कुछ हो सकते हैं, अनजाने में भी हो सकते हैं, या पैर के नीचे कोई मक्खी वगैरह जो जानदार चीज़ हैं वो जा सकते हैं, या किसी की बुराई हम कर सकते हैं किसी अनजाने में, तो इसलिए हम माफ़ी मांगते हैं।
It is the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha which illuminates the lives of the people of these remote regions till today.
The many chortans that we see everywhere symbolize the living faith of the people. The name chortan is Tibetan for stupa, which comes from an early Indian tradition. In Buddhism, the stupa contains the relics of a holy teacher. It symbolizes the continuance of the dharma or the law of the Buddha.
The Buddhist beliefs of harmony and compassion remain deeply interwoven in the lives of the people of Kinnaur and Spitty till today. The knowledge and wisdom of the faith is passed on through the generations.
Even in changing times, the gentle traditions of Buddhism are continued by many. They cherish deeply the values which they have inherited over the centuries.
1974 में जब टूरिस्ट के लिए लद्दाख को खोल दिया गया, तब से लद्दाख में बहुत बड़ा चेंज हुआ। तरक्की तो ज़रूर हुआ, मगर हमने तरक्की से ज़्यादा आर्ट और कल्चर को खो दिया। खोना मीन्स जो बोलचाल, जो रहन सहन हमारे लद्दाख में थे, वो ज़रा थोड़ा ख़त्म होने लगा है। अब लोग पढ़ाई तो ज़रूर करने लगा है, पढ़ाई तो कोई भी कर लेते हैं, मगर पढ़ाई के साथ साथ जो बुराइयां आने लगा हैं, वो मेरे ख़्याल में रिलीजियस में फेथ नहीं है, इसलिए बुराइयां आए थे। साइंस हम पढ़ाई करते हैं, अगर साथ साथ में अपना जो रिलीजियस है, बुद्धिस्ट का या मुस्लिम का हो, वो अगर पढ़ाते हैं तो उसमें एक कंपैशन आ जाते हैं, प्यार मोहब्बत आ जाते हैं, तब हम बड़े अच्छे काम करते हैं। सोचते हैं कि मैं ही बड़ा बन जाऊं, मैं ही कार बना लूं, मैं ही बंगला बना लूं, अकेला मैं ही बड़ा सबसे अमीर हो जाऊं, तो वो ज़रा हमारे लद्दाख में आया है, वो ज़रा गंदा आया, अच्छा नहीं आया। तो कहते तो हैं कि तरक्की के साथ ऐसा होता है, मगर हमारे यहाँ थोड़ा ज़्यादा हो रहा है। अब आगे क्या होगा वो तो मैं नहीं बोल सकता हूँ। आज तक तो ऐसा ही हुआ है। हमारे जो बुज़ुर्ग थे वो तो बड़े प्यार से, बड़े मोहब्बत से, किसी को भी तकलीफ़ नहीं देते थे, बड़े शांति से, बड़े आराम से ज़िंदगी करते थे। और वो वाला आज भी हमारे बुज़ुर्ग लोग याद करते हैं वो ज़माना। आज से कोई 50-60 साल पहले हम बहुत याद करते हैं उस ज़माने को।
One is is inner growth, other is the outer manifestations. Since now economic and the financial resources are very available to them, so therefore everybody contributes for the development of the Buddhism and the Buddhist practices or Buddhist rituals. They spend substantial money. Today, though they are outwardly they are following Buddhism, they worship, they keep temples, they keep the statues or the photographs of the Buddha and Dalai Lama and many of the Buddhist masters in their houses now. But so far as understanding about the Buddhism seems we are lacking now. Yes, in the Himalaya as such overall, from the Ladakh to the Arunachal, Buddhism is flourishing now. It is on the account of the establishment as monasteries. Large number of the young people, they love to join the monks. Also because of the tourism, development of tourism, and also Government of India's initiative as such, every religion must be given equal opportunity to grow. All these things, the factors truly help them to grow the Buddhism. We need to give a more inner strength or inner boost now. That is needed. This is the result of the Western kind of a culture. Things become a matter of exhibition. So through this exhibition, they wanted to earn money. So therefore, this greed, which was un-Buddhistic, has unfortunately crept into the Buddhist tradition as well. So there are very few Milarepas today. So therefore, true Buddhism lies with Milarepas, who has renounced everything, simply living in the cotton cloth, living in the caves. So how many of them are there? Everybody loves to go out. Everybody loves to have a what do you call very high time and a very good life. Buddhist is a way of life. If the way of life you are leading is if not proper, then it will take you to some wrong way. Then definitely it is going to lead you to doom. It won't liberate you. It will put into the wheel of the samsara, keep on roaming there.
Some of you would have seen my other films about the trans-Himalayas and Buddhism. Sorry. You would have seen the films which concentrated upon the beautiful art of the early monasteries, the exquisite paintings which were all made by Kashmiri artists, which were invited for the purpose to paint across Ladakh and Spiti and Kinnaur and Western Tibet. You would have perhaps seen films of mine about the great Cham Dance, the dance of liberation of the Lamas, the greatest form of meditation of the Lamas, where the fruits of this meditation are shared with the people of the villages. The film today was a film of introspection, giving us a view of this great sanctuary of Buddhism, which received Buddhism early and has nurtured it through so many years. It is a film which looks at the true meaning of a Buddhistic life, which looks at how it is important to preserve the essence of it and not just the form. And this is a film which recognizes the fast changing and commercializing world around us, and how the purpose of the Buddhist faith is to take us far from the noise and clamor of the material world, far from the world of ambitions and achievements and material success, to that joy which can be found within, to take us away from the passing ephemeral images of the world in our search to try to find that which is true and lasting. I would be very happy to answer your questions and to speak more about all of this. Thank you. I would request Ms. Renu Broy to please take over and to direct the questions, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Behl. As of now, we don't have any questions, but a lot of praise, which is well deserved for the film from many of the viewers who are online right now. I'd request the participants to type their question in the chat box, if you have any, for Mr. Behl. Piyush Gupta has a question. How is Ladakh now?
Well, in the past few years, I have not been there again, but one can only see that Ladakh, like many other places, had been changing, and I suppose that change would have continued. Back even in the 80s and 90s, 1990s, was the time which I had spoken about, where people were so dignified that they never argued with each other, they never fought with each other. Even 15 years ago, a stage had come where I had seen people unable to cope with their tempers, even when there was some water flooding on the road, and there was much argument and even physical fighting. So the effects of the world, which draws us more and more into what is mine and what is yours, and wanting this and that, fighting for it. The effects of such a world had already begun to come in so much 15 years ago. And already at that time, the world of the people of Ladakh was changing. You must look back a little bit to recognize what sort of place it was. One thing which always struck me about being in the trans-Himalayas is that you had no choice but to respect nature. The oxygen was short in the air, and the moment you arrived there, you had to rest, you had to lie down. Automatically, your movements became slower, you conserved energy. It was a world in which you did not think that you were the greatest, or that you would do this or you would do that. It was a world which automatically and so easily taught you to keep your hands folded, to recognize the awe-inspiring grandeur and size of the natural world around you, which was so beautifully physically manifest around you. And such humility was so perfectly in keeping with what Buddhism taught. And it is with such a humility that we rise. It was wonderful to see that humility everywhere in a place like Ladakh and in Spitty, the two regions of the trans-Himalayas we were talking about in this film. And as the people who were interviewed in the film also said, there is perhaps no choice about negative things coming in once the material world has caught up with us. I would still say that if we recognize the fact that the material world does not concretely give us happiness, if we recognize the fact that it is giving, it is the joy of giving which can fulfill us, if we recognize the fact that it is the search for the truth, it is a search for that which is lasting, it is a search for that which is compassionate and joyous. If we have enough of that, and if we have enough reminders of that, like the great art surviving in the monasteries of Ladakh, particularly that of around the 11th century, made by the wonderful Kashmiri painters. If we have the traditions of Buddhism that continue in the monasteries, where the monks are so thoughtful, where they have a whole tradition which teaches them about humility, about what is important in the world, about the deities that are inside them and inside each one of us. The continuing traditions of the Cham Dance, which is one of the very few art forms where the social contract still remains, at least in remote places, where the lamas perform the dance for the sake of sharing with the villagers. And the villagers come to worship them. They do not come to watch a dance. Where that social contract which there used to be between all the classic dance forms in India and the people they were for. So the Cham dance, in the remote places at least, is one of the few forms of Indian art which has survived maintaining its social contract. So my own personal feeling is that if our focus remains in the right place, then the true knowledge can survive as a living knowledge. And not only that, not only survive in places like Ladakh, but places like Ladakh can also be luminous examples to the world. Of course, there are discerning people from different parts of the world and from within the country who do visit a place like Ladakh with the right attitude to learn in their minds. But they may be very few, and there may be a much larger number of tourists who do not truly have that respect and understanding of what they come looking for. So if we are careful to maintain such cultures in all the pockets where they survive, from there those cultures can expand. Really, these cultures of the search for the truth, the cultures for the search within really should expand as much as possible to the whole world. Thank you very much.
There's a question from Ravindra Bhavare. Can you say more about the painting or the mural you have shown in the film? This is reference to the art and the iconography of the mural.
The very beautiful paintings survive in the legendary chain of 108 monasteries, which were made in the 11th, 12th centuries across Ladakh, Lahore, Spiti, Kinnaur, and Western Tibet. And they were all painted by these Kashmiri artists who were invited for the purpose. And you did see some of those paintings in the film. For those of you who saw the notice for the film which was sent, there again, inside the Chortan at Mangyu, you saw the Buddhas made with that same feeling, made by the same Kashmiri artists in about the 11th century. Now, this art presents us a number of things. It presents us the art of Kashmiri painters, which otherwise has not survived. It shows us a continuation of the exquisite tradition of painting which we see beginning at Ajanta in the 2nd century BCE and going on to the 5th century CE and thereafter. We see that absolutely marvelous rendering of form, that exquisite shading, which is one of the hallmarks of this great tradition. We see the protruding further eye, which is delightfully made, which was a hallmark of the medieval idiom of painting in India. And most of all, we see in these paintings a joyousness of the Kashmiri artist. We must recall how one of the greatest Indian philosophers of aesthetics, Abhinav Gupta, was living in the valley of Kashmir just about a century before these paintings were made. And this joy of aesthetics, this understanding that our response to is something beautiful in nature or in art is akin to the salvation, to the ecstasy of salvation itself, Brahmananda. This exquisite joy which awakens the truth within us. This exquisite joy which takes us away from the ever clamoring noise of the material world around us. This is a very particular and very beautiful aspect of the artists of Kashmir. And later it informed the work of the Nepalese painters also, who painted in the trans-Himalayan regions of Tibet. But these are the roots that we see here in the Kashmiri art, and it's exquisite art which should be better known, better loved, better respected. Thank you.
There's a question from Amba Devi. Did you see any representations of Guru Rinpoche or Guru Padmasambhava in the art of Ladakh? Or is he more important in Tibet?
There are many representations of Guru Rinpoche in Ladakh and Spitty and right across the trans-Himalayan region. In fact, I have made one film on the second Buddha, which, as you know, is Guru Rinpoche, Guru Padmasambhava. In fact, one of these days we will show that film also, maybe in a couple of months from now, in this series of screenings. And indeed, Guru Rinpoche, Guru Padmasambhava, is after the Buddha, the most deeply respected person of the entire trans-Himalayan region. He is, in fact, like a living entity in the lives of the people of Ladakh and these places even today. And he is invoked all the time. There is even a particular bird, a kind of magpie, which is believed to have to be present in all the lands that he visited. And even the children used to associate that bird every time they saw it with Guru Rinpoche. It was a life which was magical. It was a life always connected to the deep meaning in life. It was a life which was connected to these little symbols that evoked the best within us. It was a life which used to take us away from our petty concerns and selfishness, always to a magical land of Guru Padmasambhava or of the beautiful paintings of the 11th century, or to the joy which is to be found within us.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
This is a question from Pia Conti Gemes. Can you tell us how to find your images of Spiti online?
Yes, Pia, I would love to be able to tell you this. The problem is that I have spent my whole life in documentation and have not organized enough the ways of disseminating these images. Some images are to be found in my book in 2 volumes, The Art of India. besides that, there are a number of films, some of which we will be showing further in this series also, which show these images and which connect these images to their meaning. But indeed, one should think about further books that would include the marvelous paintings, not only of Alchi, which is better known, but the paintings, the exquisite paintings of that period across Ladakh and Spiti, and in fact going up to the earliest paintings surviving in Tibet, which are in Western Tibet at extremely high altitudes. One day, all this should be done, and if you have any ideas, please do email me about it. And truly, these are images which one should find ways of making more accessible to the world. Thank you.
Next question is Piyush Gupta. Is so-called progress bad for us?
Progress is a very good thing. As was being pointed out by one of the people who were interviewed, one of the persons who was interviewed in the film also. Education, progress is good. But if it is progress which forgets the spiritual purpose of life, if it is progress which takes us at all away from our recognition of the importance of every animal, every bird, every plant that there is in the world, if it is progress which takes us away from the understanding of how to be happy, how to search for joy, then the progress is inflicting an injury upon us. Because any progress which takes us away from the science of life, the science of the mind, which takes us away from the science of ourselves, is not good for us. So progress per se is extremely good. But it must be a progress which recognizes the vast landscapes of life, the beauty of life, the gorgeous beauty of the rising sun, the wonderful red which sometimes tinges the clouds at the time of the setting sun. A life which recognizes how beautiful little children are and how beautiful little animals are. It's as simple as that, the constant appreciation of the beauty of even the child of a goat, a kid. It is these moments of joy, these moments of recognition, which are like within an inspiration. And all this must be a part of our education. Anything which takes us away from the importance of all this, which makes life rich and beautiful, now that is not progress. That is just some kind of material progress. Thank you very much.
This is from QCOM BTD. Just a minute, it's rolled up. Yes. Whenever we visit Manali, Shimla, we see blue eyes drawn on vehicles, on houses. What does it symbolize?
Eyes, the eyes that I am most familiar with, which are painted, are on stupas or chotans, whether it is in Arunachal Pradesh, whether it is in Ladakh, whether it is in Bhutan. The eyes which symbolize the all-seeing nature of the divine. So perhaps what you are noticing must be a more recent version of the same tradition. Thank you very much.
Manju Goel, which camera did you then use and now use? Please tell.
Well, in terms of still camera, I used to use a Nikon F3, and then later on, I'm now using a fully digital Nikon camera. In terms of the video, it's always been shot on Sony cameras. The present camera is what is described as a 4K camera, which is twice the resolution of high definition. And since I do travel immensely, or I have been traveling immensely for the shootings all over the world in remote places, etc., I've always looked for that which I thought was the most reliable equipment, the finest quality, and also the most reliable equipment. And as grace would have it, it's always worked out very well. Thank you.
Well, that was the last question, and some more comments saying that it was awesome and inspiring and wishing us a healthy and long life. With that, I think we'll come to a close. And thank you all very much for attending on behalf of India Habitat Center and Benoy K Behl and myself.